He is amazing. If you think he was good up here to a friendly audience, go on the website and see what he does on college campuses where he's booed, where he's attacked, where people come up to him, young people come up to him, and they just don't understand America. He is calm. He tries to teach. He's a natural teacher. So thank you, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. Thank you. You know, where do you want your children and grandchildren to be? When we look back, you know, we're ahead 5 years from now, where do you want them to be? So think about that. I'd like to introduce two very powerful and influential women right now. Cleta Mitchell is partner of Foley & Lardner, LLP. She previously served as legal counsel for the National Republican Senatorial Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee, co-counsel for the National Rifle Association on a Supreme Court case involving the 2002 federal campaign finance law, director and general counsel for Term Limits Legal Institute, and member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives. She's an author and serves on the board of the Lined and Harry Bradley Foundation. Cleta received her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Oklahoma. She and her husband Dale live in Washington, D.C. Ginni Thomas is president of Liberty Consulting, Inc., and has a passion for activating informed American patriots and advising conservatives on how to maximize their influence. Each year, Ginni helps provide impact awards to highly effective and influential conservative leaders. For nearly 8 years, she produced weekly video interviews of leaders for the Daily Caller website. During her career, she launched a nonprofit for citizen engagement and served as the first director of operations for Hillsdale's Kirby Center in Washington, a senior official at the Heritage Foundation, a leadership staffer for House Majority Leader Dick Armey, a senior political appointee at the U.S. Department of Labor, a labor counsel at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and legislative director for her Nebraska congressman following graduation from law school. She makes her home in the Washington, D.C. area. And that's just a short bio for these two ladies. So thank you, and let's welcome Cleta Mitchell and Ginni Thomas.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be with you, and thank you so much for having me. I want to begin. Where's my clicker?
Yeah, good question. Oh, there it is.
Oh.
That's critical.
Okay, there we go. So I want to talk this morning. When you come to CNP, you have a lot of people telling you about a lot of great things they're doing. And I spend my time trying to help conservatives be able to do what they want to do within the bounds of the very, I believe, unconstitutional laws within which we have to work, whether it's FEC, campaign finance, et cetera. I want to share with you today, though, what the left does with 501c3 charitable dollars. And my goal here today is that I know all of you are doing a lot of things in your arenas, but I want you to stop and think about what we have to do if we're really going to fight the left. This is a quote that was in November of last year, November 7th. The head of Democracy Alliance wrote on the morning of November 7th, 2 years ago, on the day after Donald Trump's surprise victory, I woke up at 5 a.m., threw out my planned agenda for that year's upcoming Democracy Alliance conference, and got to work with colleagues and allies trying to understand what hit us. This morning, I'm happy to say it is Donald Trump who has to worry about his agenda. How many of you know what the Democracy Alliance is? You ever heard of the Democracy Alliance? Well, it's not a 501c3, it's not a 501c4 or a 527 or a PAC. It's a network of left-wing donors who agree to give $250,000 a year to the Democracy Alliance and pledged to give another $250,000 per year to any one of a number of groups that are audited and vetted and presented to these donors. So these are left-wing donors who agree to give to and through the Democracy Alliance $500,000 per year. And it facilitates the funding of a lot of other groups. The Funders Committee for Civic Participation. Anybody ever heard of that? This is a group that says this is their mission up here, but I want you to see the highlighted language, but in particular the last sentence. Our members support nonpartisan efforts to engage voters, eliminate structural barriers to voting, advance reforms to, quote, improve government and electoral systems, and inspire public involvement in civic life. Who are they? Look at that list. You can't see that list, but that's nearly 100 left-wing funders, of which Democracy Alliance is one member. The Funders Committee for Civic Participation includes such things as the Minnesota Council on Foundations, 2 different Rockefeller Foundation groups. Look at all, these are 501c3 private foundations, plus the AFL-CIO, of which Democracy Alliance, which has donors that give $500,000 a year, is only one member. So $40 million was the budget for the Funders Committee for Civic Participation, just the organization, not all the contributions that all those groups made. That's just the Funders Committee. $40 million on their last 990, which was 2017. It's 100 liberal funders and foundations, including the Open Society Institute, which is George Soros, and the Democracy Alliance, which is just one, the AFL-CIO, Rockefeller, the Tides Foundation, which has billions of dollars, of which Teresa Heinz Kerry is now leading. And what do they do? Now, I passed out at your tables, because I know you can't read this chart, but they spent a year in 2017 developing their theory of impact. That big yellow circle there is their committee, the Funders Committee, where they bring together funders and train them to be involved. The green is not environmental, it's money. The funders provide the money for these strong networks. And then the blue are the strong organizations and networks that are involved and engaged. And the purpose is that red, and you see that fist? That's actually that's a communist fist. The culture of participation, to promote equitable and open democracy and give them power. This is all 501c3 activity, ladies and gentlemen. These are some of their code words that I think are really important for us to think about. Civic engagement, expanding the electorate, protecting voting rights, political participation, etc. There's another one, equity. Equity is a big one of their words, and the disenfranchised. And why are those code words important? Because they have legal significance. As long as these organizations are engaged in doing something that is targeted to underserved communities, the disenfranchised, the civic participation, promoting equity, and they never say Democrat, they never say Republican, they never say vote for this candidate, don't vote for that candidate. They talk about civic engagement and get people involved because they know that if they target certain communities and they can get them registered and get them to the polls, that those groups they can count on, or they believe they can, will vote 90%, 95% for Democrats. And so they do all of this political activity through 501c3 organizations. And they never say what they're really doing. But they are very powerful, they're very effective, and they're very engaged. Now, what do we, as conservatives, what should we do? We come to meetings, and this slide is really written to me. I have to remind myself, stop talking, stop just going to meetings, and stop complaining, because, man, I complain a lot about the left and about all the things I see. And let me tell you what, when I was preparing this presentation, I almost thought, why am I bothering? Why don't I just pull the covers back over my head and go back to bed or go work on my short game? Because absolutely, how can we fight all of this money? And how should we engage? I am saying to you, you have to decide to engage. You have to think about who is our community. Think of everyone in your community that you're serving through your ministries, through your organizations, your activists, your volunteers. That's a target group of voters. And you need to be thinking about that, because between now and next November, we have a lot of work to do. We're behind the 8 ball with the media and Hollywood and all. We've seen what they do. And what are some ideas for underserved communities? You know, take a leaf out of the left. Rural voters, people in rural communities, pro-life voters, stay-at-home moms, the people in your churches, the people who are your donors and activists and volunteers with your ministries, people who are pro-Israel, Jewish voters. Why do we find the Jewish voters who go to synagogue once a week? They apparently vote differently than their left-wing fellow Jews. Gun owners, who are patriots. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if we think about it and think about our spheres of influence, we can think about these people as voters, and we have to get them to realize they have to register and vote. And you don't ever have to say, go vote for Donald Trump. But presumably they have a brain. We can educate them, but we can educate them about the importance of registering and voting. Now, what is civic engagement? As a 501c3, you should develop your plan for engagement. You have to have a plan. A whole bunch of ideas is not a plan. So you need to think about, okay, we can do this. And I know what everybody says, oh my gosh, we're so busy, we have so much to do, we can barely keep the lights on, and we're so tired. Forget it. We have to add this responsibility if we're going to win next year. And think who your target is. Develop a voter registration plan. You'd be surprised at how many of the people with whom you come in contact are not registered or do not vote. And it's your job to figure out how to make registering and targeting people to vote and get them out to vote, how important that is. Make that a priority. Put it on your to-do list. Develop your voter registration and turnout programs. If you're in the private sector, what are you saying to your customers? Are you registered? Are you voting? It's really important. You don't ever have to mention a candidate or political party. But I believe that if we would take that responsibility on, it's important. And what is stopping you? So there are 3 steps to this civic engagement. 1, write your plan, written plan. Target the citizens who need to be mobilized and figure out what your numerical targets are and see how you can multiply those. Step 2 is be involved in voter registration, whether it's online or in the mail or door-to-door or whatever, but think about it. Find out what the rules are in your state and do something about making sure people are registered and able to vote. And then mobilize and get them to the polls a year from now. Now, if you're a 501c4 organization, I don't know what your excuse is, because you can do all the things that I've just described for a C3, and you can even add the component about asking them who to vote for. And so the question is, what is stopping you? I know. You're afraid of the IRS. Believe me, I get that. I represented a number of groups who were targeted by the IRS during the Tea Party scandal, so I get that. But the fact is, that's no reason to be afraid. We saw what Jerry Corsi went through with the government, and we want to talk about we're afraid to step out and do something because what? What are you afraid of? I'll tell you what you should be afraid of. I had a call earlier this week. Kelly Kilberg suggested that this gentleman call me. I want to tell you about Hamilton County, Tennessee. This is what he told me on Monday. In 2013, a group of people moved into Chattanooga, and they are paid organizers, paid by dollars flowing from some of those funders I talked to you about earlier. And since that time, they've run candidates for the school board, and they've been distributing things on the ground of equity. We're going to promote equity in Hamilton County. They've now elected a majority of the school board. They're on their way to electing a majority of the county commission. They've proposed a $39 million property tax increase. They're promoting in the schools the LGBTQ agenda. They're promoting racial polarization and division. And that's what you need to be afraid of, because it's coming to a community near you. If they can do it in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they can do it everywhere. See this? This is a group. I took this from a presentation that was made to some of these funders from the Fund for Civic Participation. And it was a presentation to get funders to support this one particular effort. This is in Florida alone, 58 501c3 organizations involved in changing the voting laws and the electoral procedures in Florida. All 501c3, these are their partners. So I want to tell you that if you just say, I can't do it, I cannot get involved, don't deny your supporters the opportunity to be involved, because it's important to give all of your people the opportunity, and I'm going to give you a couple of options. Number one is you do it. Do what I said. Write a plan. Figure out how to target and turn out voters. Do that yourself. If you don't know how to do it, Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots said she'd help you. Or if you say, I just don't think we can do that, all right, send out a notice to everybody in your community and your sphere of influence, and FreedomWorks says, we'll train your volunteers, we'll mobilize them. So we could actually work together the way the left does. The third option is don't do anything and let them win. Just keep doing what you're doing and pay no attention to what they're doing. I have contact information, which we'll make available to you to send something out if you want to say, okay, we are going to tell our activists and volunteers to sign up with FreedomWorks. I know everybody goes, oh, you're going to steal my donors, you're going to steal my volunteers, I don't want them, you're going to solicit money. Look, you guys all trade lists and read each other's lists. You're soliciting from the same people anyway, so quit worrying about that. And Jenny Beth said she would help. They've got lots of toolkits on mobilization of citizens. And I want to tell you, Jenny's going to tell you that culture is the most important thing, and you are culture warriors, and that politics is downstream from culture, and I do believe that. But ultimately, there comes a point in time when you're electing people, and that's our only way to fight back. That is the way we fight back. So I want to share with you a notice I just got from the Wall Street Journal, a bulletin I just got while I was sitting backstage. Australia's Conservative government eked out a surprise victory in national elections after voters in resource-rich districts turned against center-left opponents who had put climate change at the heart of their campaigns. Nobody saw that coming. I have to believe that there are plenty of us out there, like those conservatives in Australia. So I would tell you, Tiger Woods is PGA, missed the cut yesterday. Tiger Woods used to do ads for Accenture. And about 3 weeks after his great blow up with his wife, when his life fell apart and we all learned all the ugly side of Tiger Woods, I was in the Dulles airport getting ready to leave, and there was this big Accenture ad, which was this. See that golf ball down in the ravine? That's kind of where we feel we are most of the time. And the caption on this ad said, "It's what you do next that matters." Matter. It's what you do next that matters. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm so thankful that CNP put Charlie Kirk and Cleta and I all together. It really goes very well. Watch what happens. I want to say, too, I was negligent. Crystal Clanton, please stand up. Crystal is my guest, and Crystal was 5 years Charlie's right-hand person, the wind in his sails from a garage organization to this organization. And now she's the wind in my sails, and before she goes to law school. And so it all connects. So I have 13 slides and one action item. You can watch this so that we're on time. On Thursday, Al Regnery did a great thing for the movement. He brought all of us together to talk about the left and the escalating tactics of the left and the winning ideological left, who has won the culture war and has weaponized every single one of those institutions that Charlie talked about against our point of view. And Charlie did a beautiful job of describing it. Only Rush Limbaugh And Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager and a few people are talking about the culture war that we're in. It's a cultural revolution, and normal Americans are not going to get it unless we all do that. We all have to lift that up and help explain to America the fight against America, the fight against our values, and what Donald Trump ended up winning. And he's a culture warrior. We have some culture warriors, but we have a lot more to do. So conservatives and Republicans are tired of being the oppressed minority, I hope, falsely vilified, slandered, and defamed as extremists and bigots and haters. And we have to, they're making it justifiable and normalized to fight us, to hurt us, to kill us even. You can see it everywhere. Wearing a MAGA hat. What's wrong with that? Or putting a sign up? Normal people are taking the brunt of the mob tactics that are forming in schools and workplaces and all around us in our communities. So it's cultural Marxism. We're in it. They're winning. We have to do something different. So Daniel Greenfield, who works with David Horowitz yesterday, said one of his tips, move fast and break things, you guys. Bill Mayerling said of ALEC, told all the conservatives, as Cleta did, realign your strategies and projects to this new reality that the left has us all in. Kristen Eastlick of Capital Research Center offered to help and investigate anyone who's attacking you or your organization with their great research about the left. Larry Solov of Breitbart implored us to organize like the left organizes and go put pressure on these so-called neutral service organizations, these ad entities, who are keeping them from getting ad revenue, silencing their voice. Dan Gaynor and Brent Bozell, not Ginni Thomas, they are the ones who are ringing the bell on social media censorship. They're coalescing a lot of us and doing the leadership on that we need. The amazing Bob McEwen also was all over this conference Thursday, and he just kept reminding us of how great America is and how the God-given privilege of being a warrior for America right now. And so what do? We all have to be a culture warrior. We do. And politics is part of culture. As a mentor told me, though, you have to know your enemies. Sun Tzu had the quote right. So the quote is up there. I won't read it for you. The conservative movement, especially those in the Washington area and the donor community, have overinvested in politics and the horse race, thinking that political leaders are going to save us from this. And I think we all know politicians are a little weak. I don't know if you've noticed that. So except for Mark Meadows and some of our great people, but most of Republicans don't want to offend people. They don't have courage. They're weak or they're confused. We've got to be the force behind them. A lot of them don't know what hill they'd ever die on. We know the hill we'd die on. We're going to go down fighting for this country. And so the left has gone through all these cultural institutions. They're eroding the pillars of our country, and we're not doing enough. We're not saying enough. We're not tying it together for ordinary Americans. And so the idea is, look at this chart. The left is one single line. Daniel Greenfield called it one ecosystem. They hang together. You never hear them criticize, even Antifa, the violent side of their splinter movement. Maybe a few do. I'm just generalizing. But the right, you know us, we're siloed. A few of us do politics, and even those people, we really argue with one another. We could kill each other sometimes. But we don't really take note of what the people are doing fighting in the faith community or on campuses or in arts and entertainment. And so the idea that we came up with, and UIP, United in Purpose, fortunately, blessedly, supported a culture summit in January, and we found like 35 of the best thinkers about what the left is doing, and we started putting our heads together, and I think we're starting to build something that will be filling in the gap. So the idea is we're going to look at everything a little differently. We know that they will use any means necessary, and it's escalating. The left's tactics are escalating. So we're going to know the enemy better. We're going to create more unity across our movement based on strategic plans and tactics that need to be done. We're going to lift up our heroes like Justin Danhoff is just on my radar screen, and David Radno. They're doing great things in the corporate world, and we're losing the corporate world that is working against us now, not just in social media, but look at the Equality Act. It was the hard left and the corporate community who was pushing, and we in our movement just view that as, oh, that's a social issue. No, that's a culture issue. When they're redefining the Civil Rights Act, there's something very large, and it affects our families, the way we go to school, the way we do our business. So we're going to do things differently. You can find out more about us later. We're crowdsourcers for liberty and culture, and we're dividing up into teams based on these culture lanes and figuring out some new ways to do things. If nothing happens, if we do keep doing what we're doing, we can't just overinvest in politics. We're going to lose the whole thing because they're using, you can see it, arts and entertainment and media and the education lane, and they create the narrative and say family separation. Did you see how that swept through Washington and it made politicians bend over and twist like pretzels? Everybody wanted to bow to this narrative the left drove through their cultural institutions. That's what we're trying to tease out and see and rebuild the architecture for how we fight this. Our house is on fire, and we are stomping ants in the driveway. We're not really focused on the arsonists who are right around us, and that Cleta just identified a number of them. And so crowdsourcers is going to hang egos on the wall. This is our mission. We're going to hang egos on the wall, keep identifying our best leaders to get in a room and think through what can we do to regain our credibility in our culture with education, with arts and entertainment, with media, policy and politics as well, and others. And I'm not the answer person. If anyone knows me, you know this. I'm merely a convener. I find the talent, and I put them in a room, and I help them talk to one another, encourage. And that's what UIP, thankfully, has enabled us to do, too. And so I'm going to give you one action item. We have an upcoming summit, the second summit, and it is this is what we did at our first summit. So we found out there were 4 things we needed to do before we did these culture lane projects. We had to brand the left, and you heard Charlie just did a great job. I'm taking notes, and Richard Viggory has done a great job. If you want to see him, he's got a whole package of how to brand the left, and if we all did it, God forbid, if we all did what Richard has done for us and Charlie just laid out, think of how much more informed the whole mainstream of America would be. We also realized that we have to rebuild our infrastructure a little bit. We need to do better synchronized messaging and things that can build a grassroots army fast for the times that we're in. And we need to protect our heroes, like Corsi, like James O'Keefe. And James O'Keefe wanted to head up that group. And so you see people get swarmed. Jason Hill just got swarmed in the Chicago area on a DePaul campus because he is a Jamaican immigrant, a gay Jamaican immigrant who loves America and loves Israel, and they are taking his head off. And so we've got his back, and we will find those people here and other places who are under attack because they believe what we believe and love America. And let's defend our heroes better. And then lastly, we had that C4 kind of activity. So Cleta was running operation for that. So we're a C3 now under Capital Research Center, the crowdsourcers group, but we want Cleta and others to be very successful at defending Trump and changing the RNC to do a better job. So that's what we did before. We're coming together, and you're going to get an assignment here in a minute and want to make notes on what you're going to do to help us. The choice is between two things. You can take yoga, learn to be flexible, and bend over, kiss your behind goodbye. Or you can be like Cleta and I and fight to the end and be a culture warrior. And we need you to not take yoga. So here's the one ask with 28 seconds. Take a note of this we're going to ask you to help us. It's 8 questions on a Survey Monkey that all you have to do is write this down and help us. Answer those 8 questions by May 23rd. You go to surveymonkey.com/r/cap CNP. You can see it up there. It'll be hanging there for a little bit. So please write that down because we're asking you to help identify who are our warriors in each of these lanes. What are your ideas for projects and plans to better tell America what the left is doing and hold up like torches our views better? So we're including you. Don't think you haven't been asked. You can't just sit and take notes. This is the one thing we want you to do. Thank you very much.
I want to thank Cleta and Ginni for their great presentations. We've had a lot of interesting information, but information that we all need to act on. It's not enough to think right. It's not enough to talk right. You have to take action if you're going to have any kind of an impact on things going forward. I'd like to take this time now to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Peter Navarro received his PhD in economics from Harvard University and is a professor emeritus of economics and public policy at the University of California, Irvine. He served as economic and trade advisor during the 2016 Trump campaign and joined the White House staff on Inauguration Day. He now serves as director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy, an office established